receiver for the 23 financial institutions that have had their licenses revoked has also been giving details on managing the process from this morning. They argued that the required structures have been instituted to handle depositors from this morning onwards. Kingsford Arthur is the Director of Operations for the receivership.
Help me out. How are things going to work out from today in terms of all these scattered branches and opening the doors to engage these depositors who will be trumping, I believe, today to get their monies?
So thank you very much, George. As you're aware, on Friday, the 16th of August, we had the revocation of licenses of 23 savings and loans institutions. The receiver moved in, and we have men across the 503 or so branches across the country. What would happen is that on Friday, we locked up the places, engaged the employees, explained the processes to them. And on Monday, we would go in there and work with these employees to go into the books, locate the books, find out what is in the books, and basically begin the process of running the institution. As a first step is to make sure that we are in complete control of all the assets of the company. So things like books and records, things like the vehicles, basically understanding the day one of the process. Then, as you would basically expect, most the depositors will rush in to come and see where their deposits are. And we've put in place measures to ensure that proof of debt forms are available. That would require each depositor to give us some basic information, your name, your contact details, how much you think is in there, your mode of payment if you want to expect payment or if you can get payment, etc., etc. Quite a detailed form, and would expect that they fill these and then return them to us, which I'm hoping can be done this week. And then we would start the validation. And I'm not saying that we'll start the validation after everybody has submitted. Once a form is submitted, we will deal with that form and so on and so forth. So basically,
and sorry again, so from today, I mean, where do we draw the line between just opening the books, getting the deeper understanding, putting things together and all the rest, and also the pressure from these depositors who want to engage you? I mean, you're going through the numbers, you're trying to assess the assets, this guy, and then you have customers who are on your neck trying to get these forms to actually begin the process to validate their claims.
So we have different teams doing different things. There's somebody who is going to deal solely with the customers in terms of distributing the POD forms, explaining the processes to them for them to understand how these should be filled. Then there's another team now looking into the books together with the former employees of these institutions. So it's not one person doing everything. Different teams are tackling different issues, so that we bring some seamless service to the process.
What are you doing to deal with the crowd?
Well, we are expecting them to be reasonable and cooperate with us. We've just come in as receivers or agents of the receivers. We've just come in, and we need to understand what is there. And so, I think it's natural to expect them irate because they've had their money stuck in there. But the message to them is to be patient and cooperate with us for us to understand what is in there. And once we get to understand it, then we can actually tell them what we should be able to tell them. Violence wouldn't solve the problem. We have the support of the Ghana police. They've deployed men across the patch. But I am praying that we don't get to that point. So the message through your medium is to get everybody to understand that a receiver has been appointed. The receiver needs time, needs a lot of time to understand what is in there. And once we get to understanding that, the receiver will come out and give some clear guidelines.
But you appreciate and understand depositors who might be worried and irritated, quote, because they need their money.
Perfectly well. Perfectly well. I can put myself in their shoes. But violence wouldn't solve the problem. I mean, we've had instances in the past where depositors have gone in and ransacked and vandalized things, only for them to realize that we've actually come in to solve a problem. I think they find themselves in a better position today than before the 16th, because at least somebody has come in to look at the records and see how much can be paid based on the monies that government has given us. And so I will plead with you to use your medium to request all of them to be patient. We will work hard and be very smart about things, but mind you, in moments like these, diligence is also key. We have people, including fraudsters, who take advantage of this space and bring in claims that are not legit. And so if we are not careful, we end up paying the whole town. We need to go through the motions and make sure that we are paying the right people. Let them be patient, plead with them through your medium and other media. Let them be patient, and would make sure that we treat them.
How are you going to deal with companies that I knew it happened in the microfinance space that are going to resist your takeover?
Well, we are working with Act 930. A receiver has been appointed under Section 123 of the Act, and he is in place. If the former directors have his issues, they should be dealing with the regulator, Bank of Ghana. Any attempt to stop the receiver from doing his work is basically an infringement of that act. And so I think we don't want to go to that point.
The law will take its course.
Exactly. We don't want to get to that point. A receiver has been appointed. I think that we should be able to have some cordial relationships to be able to deal with this. What we typically would do is to reach out to the shareholders and directors and engage them out of courtesy, engage them, explain the processes to them, and request their cooperation so we can deal with
it. If you have any contestation directly to the Bank of Ghana?
Exactly. Anything that has to do with the license, the receiver cannot deal with, because the receiver didn't give or revoke those licenses. The receiver has just been appointed to deal with a resolved institution. So if any director or any shareholder has an issue with the revocation, I think the best place is Bank of Ghana.
Any idea the number of workers that you are having on the books, or do you think that you'll be engaging to work with you?
Off the top of my head, I think we are dealing with about 3,000 people. Off the top of our head. But this is early days. Today is Sunday. We took on Friday at 3:30 p.m. Hopefully by tomorrow, our men are on the ground. They should be able to feed us information in terms of a personnel list and so on and so forth. Then we'll be able to give you some better understanding of what is in there.
And it's your hope that you get the cooperation from all these two parties, that is the workers and the depositors who have their monies in these companies?
The first week is always tricky. From experience, the first week is always rough. We have irate depositors naturally coming in to demand their monies, right? We have directors who out of shock are not able to cope with the situation. But I think after a few days of dialogue and explanations, they come around and we are able to deal with. We've dealt with them on other banks and of course the MFI.
And do you have the necessary support from the law enforcement agencies? Because again, these things will be quite rough this week to ensure that there is calm at each of the centers that you're working with.
If our experience on the microfinance is anything to go by, then we believe that we have absolute support from the security agencies to do our work.
Deploying them on the ground.
We have more than 700 policemen across the patch, right? And there are other SWAT teams. So depending on where there are hotspots, we call on them to support. But I think that so far, we will definitely get the one or two spots where we would have to deal with. But from experience, typically, I'm sure by Wednesday, Thursday, latest.
Kingsford Arthur there, Director of Operations at PwC Ghana, the receivers appointed by the central bank. So why not speak to an industry person about these recent revocation of licenses? Now, I happened to catch up with the president of the National House of Chiefs and former chairman of the National Investment Bank, Togbe Akpede, the 14th. He had some thoughts on this.
I would have wished that, Bank of Ghana has real issues, no question, with a lot of the banks, a lot of the savings and loans, and there are real issues, of self-dealing, failure to observe lending limits, or Bank of Ghana's lending guidelines and all of that. There were a lot of problems, no question about it, But I think that the approach could have been different, less destructive than we have today, and will be informed by a lot of scientific analysis. I'll give you an example. If I owe Kofi 10 cedis, Kofi also owes Ama 8 cedis. Okay? And another person also owes 6 cedis, the same amount. You see, there's like a 10 cedis debt. You're adding maybe another 8 cedis debt. You're adding another 6 cedis debt. You already have a 24 cedis debt. 24. But the other day, it's not really a net of 24, it's 10. If that 10 is paid to the person who is owed, You see what I'm saying? He also pays the aids, the person who, he also pays. So there must be analysis that will try to reconcile the books of all the banks and financial institutions, and therefore establish the amount of overlapping indebtednesses so you can get the net indebtedness. So for instance, a book debt of, in the example that I given, 24 cedis, maybe it's just 10 cedis. Once that 10 cedis is paid, the same can be said of a lot of government indebtedness to the contractors. Government pays the contractors, maybe 1 billion is owed. They also pay the banks what they owe them. The banks also pay the other banks that they owe. The problem may not be as big as it is today if a lot of patience had been put in. Scientific analysis that helps to establish the nature and the source of those debts. We get a net indebtedness. That is really what the core is, not the summation of all debts. You see what I'm saying? But when you go in the way you have gone in, then you don't allow logical reasoning and approach to come in that helps to solve the problem in a smooth way. So at the end of the day, the person who is owed 10 cedis is in the hole by 10 cedis. It's not getting 10 cedis. The person who he also owes 8 cedis is in the whole 8 cedis. That person, so everybody's, is destroyed. When just one payment of 10 cedis would have solved all payment problems. So analysis that, almost like that's a certain amount of offsetting. A certain amount of offsetting. I realize that some of these debts can be collected from the books. This one cancel this one cancel this, one cancel this. Not a lot of money would exchange. Problem is solved. But when you hit the way you have done, you create disaster. That's what we have. You see. And again, it creates a kind of panic that is not good. There is no bank in this world that can survive a rush on it, because no bank keeps all monies that they take from depositors as cash sitting there. Okay, how do bank create money? We learn it from our O-level economics. Okay, the bank, you put 10 cedis there. Out of the 10 cedis, because they don't, you don't need all immediately. They take 9 and give somebody as a loan. That person also probably took the money as credit line. He didn't probably take it out. So again, more money can be. So from 10 cedis can be created a lot of money. You see what I'm saying? We pick up all of this. So it's important that some of these things are approached in a little more patience, but of course, strict way, so that you don't create more problems than you are trying to solve. You see, so it makes the whole system confused, and so many banks, many savings and loans will cave in when they must not. Again, sometimes just the set off alone cleans up the books. And so what injection of money is needed is so much smaller than was thought about. You see, as I said, no one bank in this world can withstand a rush by investors, because none is keeping money. They vote for the price of creating money. From 10 cedis, they lend so much money. You see, the strongest bank in this country, if there's a big rumor that there's a scandal that can destroy the bank, just even rumor. When people rushed on that bank now, they can't meet the obligation. That bank is dead. You see, so the kind of the panic that we saw resulting from the way the process of handle itself was not good. You see what I'm saying? It could have been managed a little better, and then the genuine ones who have done genuine lending could survive. You see, just by their debts being set off here and there, because they owe somebody. Somebody also owes them, and some of them are all interrelated. You see, I think that a little more caution would have helped the process.
So it's one of two things. It's either that the Bank of Ghana didn't quite understand the analysis that you've just explained, or they understood it but deliberately did something else. Which is it?
Bank of Ghana has a lot of serious people, trust me. They have a lot of serious people, and I'll be surprised if they have not done some of the analysis. But my only worry is that, you know, the rush with which things were done creates a little bit doubt as to whether this kind of thorough across-board analysis was done, as opposed to taking them into our banks. You see what I'm saying? Because that was done, for example, we know that government owes the contractors. So we know that when the government pays contractors X billion, this bank will get maybe 200 million. And so the 50 or the 100 million they also owe can be paid. It's all part of the same analysis. It's not just all the indebtednesses. Develop a big spreadsheet that tries to, you know, reconcile them and to establish the overlaps and what have you, would lead us to what the core, what the fundamental indebtedness is, you know. It will require a bit of patience to do that. Not many months, a lot of patience though. I'm not sure what was done, but I am saying that I believe that if something like that was done, okay, the problem would have turned out to be much smaller than it is. There are some that will cave in, not because they did anything bad, but because others did bad things. And in any case, as I said, maybe the set-off could save some of those banks. Just set-off, a lot of, you know, could save a lot of those, you see. And then you get what the net indebtedness is. Like I've demonstrated hypothetically with the 10 cities initial, you know, borrowing, all of that, you see. But Bank of Ghana, no question in my mind, experienced people, they know all these things. They understand these things better than I do. I just try to stretch my imagination, as I always do, to try to understand phenomena, and I try to hypothesize, and, you know, I believe they understand. Whether they do it, I'm not sure about that. Because I believe if it is done, we would have had a less confused situation on our hands, and avoided the kind of crisis that we find ourselves in, you know. And I don't think it's another problem yet, you see, but I'm saying that it could have been approached in a more organized manner. You all remember the American debt crisis of 2007. Maybe they also went in that same rush. Even at that time, I was wondering, did they really reconcile all the books, again, to establish the overlaps and do setups to narrow down the difficulties and minimize the I don't know whether they did it, and I'm not sure that we did it ourselves, but I believe that something like that done will create a less, you know.
Tobe Afede there, chairman of the National House of Chiefs and former chairman of the National Investment Bank, NIB. Right, okay, so there's so much more to come. We're going to bring you a quick recap of the grand finale of the Ghana Grand, which was at the Independence Square yesterday. That and so much more coming up on the AM show. Don't go anywhere. There's a couple of messages, and then we'll be back.